Okay, I'm back. I got knocked off there. That's what happens when you do this on your phone and not on a laptop. I need a laptop. Anyway, I'll wait till you guys come back, see if you come back. So, you know, there I was, my second day at the Old Crones, and I was, you know, it was like I was reborn. I was in a place where, I knew a lot of stuff, for being 19 or 20, whatever I was at that time. I knew more than the average bear, right? And I hadn't got to the point of thinking I was, hot shit. I thought I was hot shit. Yeah, I'm back. When I was 16. And Carlton Haynes, I had a friend who was a friend of Madame Ogenkluver's, right? And Carlton was the original Marlboro Man. This is a short story, just an interlude before the wait for the gang to get back. And so Carlton was, a Ford model. He came from a rich family. His mother was the queen of antiques. That's why she was a good friend of Madame Olga Kluver's. And Carlton knew Madame Kluver since he was a little boy. And Carlton was in his 40s, and I was 16. So, and Carlton would walk in, and he went to prep schools, and he went to, I think Princeton or something, but he didn't last too long. Then he went to California, and he got into the Ford, and he became the first Marlboro Man. Boom, 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 boom. And it was amazing. No woman could resist his charms. And so basically, all guys hated him. And then after he would throw the girl to the side after he had his way with him, she'd hit him too. So Carlton did not have the best of, street cred. But I was his, his wingman. I was 16. We went to all these bars, really fancy bars, like the Oak Room in the Waldorf Astoria and, all these really fancy schmancy places, high end. And everyone knew him. And, oh, Mr. Haynes, because he was the Marlboro Man. Plus, he came from really wealth. He had a house. And he owned all this real estate. His parents died when he was in college and left him millions of dollars, right? So he never had to worry about that. And he was pretty shrewd. I mean, his parents taught his father was a real estate guy. So his daddy owned a bunch of real estate. And Carlton bought half of Soho in the 60s, early 60s. He had almost most of West Broadway bought up. Like maybe 20 buildings from Houston Street to Canal. The building that 420 was in. I met him through, through Madame Kluver, but I met what was the guy who owned 420? Oh, his name will pop into my head. Anyway, so I was his wingman, right? And so we go to all these things, and so all these girls would be flying him around like flies, and he would pick one out of it. And then the girls, I'd be left with, 15, women who were somewhere between, I was 16, and they were between some age of 22 to 40. And the girls would then look at him, well, he's kind of sweet. Let's, like, defile him. So from 16 until I was 27, pretty much all my girlfriends were a good 4 to 20 years older than me, right? And they all had money. They all knew what they wanted. They weren't playing any games whatsoever. They thought I was cute. Once they got to know me, they thought it was interesting. Then when well, this guy actually he wants to please. I was like your basic pool boy. And so, that's Carlton, right? So, and every now and then, he had, a couple lofts down, and I was, you know, the loft boy. I was fixing up lofts. So Carlton had me fix a couple of things and he was renting them and we were having parties. And that's where I first met, the guy who had Spring Natural and the guy who had, Spring, Robert Wilson Dance Company. He had the dance hall on Spring Street. Anyway, and this was when Soho was because Soho was a bunch of really interesting artists and guys like Carlton, and all their parents had money. So everybody kind of had money. So I did stuff for everybody, and so they gave me money, and I, worked for Grandpa Stoll and the real estate guys. So I didn't have their kind of money, but I always had money, and I was Carlton's wingman, and I always had these interesting girls. And then Carlton, so he would kind of disappear, right, to wherever. He had a place in Connecticut and one in New Hampshire, and there was a place out in Long Island, and he would take me to them, but he would also disappear to them. And every now and then, I would be, because I had keys to a number of his places, and I was taking care. When he wasn't around, I took care of them for him. And I'd be at one of his loft or his apartments. He had the keys to his place in Central Park South. And anyway, so, I'd be in one of his places and I'd be asleep and I'd wake up and he'd be, in a pile of vomit in the bathroom or something. And, I'd hose him off and take care of him. And, I was his bud. And a lot of people would say, why are you friends with him? He's such an asshole. He's such a creep. He's such I can't stand this guy. Well, he was so much frigging fun. And that's why I learned how to stay, when he was going to be a really asshole, well, I could disappear too. I had other things to do. I wasn't like I am now at the behest. And I had money, and I could go to anywhere I wanted. I had a passport. I could jump on Freddie Lakers and go from Kennedy to Heathrow for $65 and stay in Europe for a month or two. Not now. I'm stuck here at the school. Unless one of you guys come and get me and takes me someplace warm, and I have really no money. I mean, right now I've because I keep, John said, "What are you doing? You cost me money." And I spent, he gave me $140 to do him favors, and I spent $270 on food and other things, right? Medicines and gas for the car and insurance. I have a ticket I have to pay for that's $200. But I only get $340 from my Social Security a month, right? So if you could, anyone out there, a few of you have, and I really thank you for it, send me some cash via Western Union, Al, Martino, to Roanoke, Virginia, and, send me on the old Gmail, the Dude Awake 42 Gmail, the tracking number, and I can just go pick it up. And a couple of you have done that already, and that's each time I get a message on the Gmail, and I go to, it's just that money just is there to I have my mechanic fixed my car in March, and I still haven't finished paying him, and I hadn't been able to pay him since September. So the money, I gave half the money I got to him, and he liked that. I said, so my New Year's resolution is to pay you some more money. And so here's, and so I gave him half of what I had received. And then I spent the rest of it on John, and I make him really good meals. I mean, I make a stew in the crock pot, and I make, a stir fry every day. And I make an omelet. And so, And then I leave. I get out of here because I need to be alone. I can't. You're such a. So I leave by 9 o'clock, whether it's raining or pouring or sunny, and I go down to the library or go visit some people that are shut-ins and stuff of that, and I go and entertain them or take them shopping or do whatever they need, and I'm living on the flux of the universe. The universe is always taking care of me, and but anyway, so when I was 16, I was making between 500 and 1,000 a week, and that was 1965, right? So most people who had jobs weren't making that. So anyway, and Carlton was very generous to me. Like I said, I had all these places I could stay. He showed me where he kept his little boxes of money and his stash and everything, and you can take whatever you want. And I would hose him down, take care of him, listen to him, make him a cup of tea when he needed it, and be his wingman, right? So, and I always stood by him. I just didn't, let myself get run over. And but when I was 16, one day we were out doing something, and I was acting like him, right? I was trying to be more like him, and we did whatever we were doing, and we didn't know fish had bit our hooks, and so we were I don't know, where were we? We were at a really nice restaurant uptown. Oh, anyway, so he goes, Al. I said, what, Carlton? He goes, you're actually my best friend. I said, really? I said, you're like 48 and I'm 16. He goes, I know. That's what I'm saying. But you accept me for who I am, and you know good enough to get out of the way when you should, and you're always there for me. You're the only person I can really depend on. So you can never depend on me. I mean, yes, I give you the keys to all these places. There's boxes of money and stash, and that's cool. But you really can't ever depend on me. That's why you have to get out of the way sometimes. And I said, yeah, I know. He goes, that's important. And I said, okay. He goes, and you really have to listen to this. And really do. You are my best friend, and so I do care about you. But I'm, a sociopath, and I really can't care for people. And I said, okay, lay it on me, Carlton. And he goes, you, at this minute, have to make a decision to be yourself and not follow my path. You can be my friend. We can hang out. You can be, part of my circle. I mean, you're the only one in my circle. And you're the only one I guide. You're the only guy I trust. And, so, but you have to really, serve that higher self that you are. And, you have to stop hanging with me and hang with Madame Olga Kluver more. Go hang out with Billy more. Go, he knew all my teachers, and be more of a student of Grandpa Stoll and not of me. Don't follow my path. And I thought about that, and he goes, and I'm going to go now. You can stay here, but I'll be back in a couple of weeks. You just keep an eye on things. So I did. But that stayed in my mind for those weeks. And so when he came back, I had talked to Madam Kluver about it. I talked to Billy about it. Talked to Grandpa Stoll about it, and a few other of my teachers who knew Carlton, and told them that story. And they said, "Well, they're right. You don't have to, right?" And that's kind of when I met Holly. And Holly was this woman who was, when I met her, she was probably 70 something. And she was another crone she was a nice Jewish crone, and her father was English, and she had lived in India, and he was a pretty famous astronomer. And when Halley's Comet came by in the early part of the 20th century, or the latter part of the 19th century. She was a little girl, or baby, and that's how she got that name. Anyway, so she hung out with all the great mystics and all the Mayor Baba and everybody and go, wow, she was like the little girl that, all these great, you know, elevated, awake Indian folk, she was bounced on their knee. And when I went to India and that neck of the woods to visit these guys with her, you know, anyway, so when he was gone, Madame Olga Kluver introduced me to her. And anyway, so all of that really kind of set my path, not in the Carlton Haynes path, but in the more aesthetic path of the sensei, Sensei El Bob. I wasn't quite Sensei El Bob. I was the kid. That was me, the kid. Okay, we've hit 10. So, and we've talked for about 16 minutes, and everybody's here. Who's here? Rose, Mr. Research. So I was telling cut 2 of the old crone, and I got knocked off. So I had to reboot. I had to cancel and restart. So this is take 2 of take 2. I'm back again. So I was talking about how, last night, I told the story of the old crone, of how I met her, and the next day how we left Dublin and went to her farm, and how that trip, took about 18 hours, but in actuality, that was linear time, but in dream time, I was awake for 72 hours, right? And then I finally went to sleep after we made it to her farm, and we danced the night away and watched the stars and the northern lights that were over her magic pond next to the tree of life. The tree of life and the pond that you see in your superconscious mind, sanctuary of your choosing. All of that, the meadow, the gazebo, all of that is straight out of the old crone's farm. So I, and did that, went to sleep after, falling into the shit pit of where she threw all her, where she had her, where you take your food clippings and you churn them up. Well, she took all organic matter and churned it up, and every spring she would rake it into one of her. She had these gardens that she would, circulate. Anyway, and that's why she never used any insecticides or fertilizers, because she moved her plants from garden to garden to garden every year. She didn't grow she didn't grow the tomatoes, and she moved everything around every year. So it, whatever they call that, when they move the crops around and you don't need to use fertilizer or insecticides. So, and so while I was waiting for you, I was telling the story of Carlton Haynes, the original Marlboro Man, who was a real jerk. And one day I'll tell you the full story about Carlton. But the little bit of the story that I told you was that how I met him, how I hung out with him, the experience I had with him, and how he was a real bad person, but he made me a better person. So is our brother from Ireland here, who wanted to see the photos of, because I unearthed them and I showed them in the first section of this. So 20 minutes. So everyone kind of sit in a place, get comfortable, relax, start breathing, go into state, illuminate yourself in your imaginary mirror. And 1, your body is being cleansed by your prana through every cell of your body. You take that energy and you bring it into your imaginary mirror where you illuminate your subconscious and go into your Akashic record and empty all your anxiety and fear and anger into it, and you're as light as a balloon, and you float through the doorway to your conscious mind, and you all go to the meadow and lie down on your picnic blanket by the sun and go over to the little crack in the root of the tree of life and use the telescope of your eye and see the old crone's farm, see it clearly. And the purple light is kind of coming up and surrounding you, and you're being taken down into the ground, into the root and the back door, into the old crone's farm. After taking the 78-hour trip in 18 hours of linear time, and we've danced the night away, and I, fell into the shit pit and cleaned myself off in my shower in my apartment in the barn where the animals are, and I took a beautiful bath in the magic healing bathtub, and I was puffing on the clay pipe of lamb's breath, and I went to bed and slept like a baby and woke up to the smell of pasta and really great French mid-Eastern coffee that was in one of those French presses. And the old crone had gone off someplace, and she left me an amazing breakfast in a picnic basket. And that's why I always talk to you guys about going to the meadow and seeing your picnic basket. This is the picnic basket, because it had never-ending amazing. So she had these little pastas. They're like little pies, pasta pies, but they're like with a many layered kind of Greek kind of puff pastry, and filled with creamy things and sweet things and savory things and vegetable things, and two thermoses in there, one with tea number one from the cast iron teapot, tea number two, right, and a little jug of poutine, and I poured. There was an empty one for the coffee to go into, and she had a list of things for me to do. Milk the animals, clean out their stalls, introduce yourself to everybody, feed them, water them, then go over while the sun is still down, cut some wood for your wood stove, and there's a cart, fill the cart up with chopped up wood this size, and take it up to the back door to the kitchen, and then come, here's a list of herbs I want you to pick out of the garden. Here's what garden they're in, this is where they're located, this is what they look like. Go into the greenhouse, and I've laid out on the work table a number of books. Look the plant up in the book, get a good idea what it is, drink enough of the tea number two, go pick the plants, bring them back, do what the book says to prepare them, not to make the potion, but to prepare them, as the rough material to make the potion. And she gave me, go over and take a look at this and see how this works and do that. And in the room was like a sitting room, library room, music room. Wasn't the big music room that people could dance in, wasn't the big library, but it was like the little room that was like my study. And it had these windows that, a window seat that had like 5 or 6 windows that opened out into the garden, into the back. And she had an 8-track player, and all of them, I don't know how she did it, but all the 8-track tapes had music that she had made or musician friends of her made that was really, really the real deal of Irish pub music. And I would just, 8-track in there and play it, and the music went throughout the whole house and outside when you open the windows. And when I went down to, milk the animals, I had that music playing, and they liked the music. They were like almost dancing. And the cow was so happy that I milked them. The goats were so happy I milked them. And I brushed the horse, and I brushed, the cow, and I brushed the ox. And I fed all the animals, and I watered all the animals, and I gave all the animals little treats. She left a little list of what treats they liked, so I would, get off on the right foot with all the animals. And I fed the dogs, and the dogs were like right by my side. They realized I was a dog boy, and everything I did when I went to the garden, when I chopped the wood, they were right by my side. They were like, and they were at all 4 points. When the dogs were with me, they were all 4 directions, right? One was in the north, south, east, and west. When I stayed in one place to pick something, they were like north, south, east, and west. And I'm walking north, and I realized these guys were there. They were my guardian angel. I mean, in the 3 months I was there, I walked through all those woods. I went all over the place, and there were like lions, tigers, and bears, oh my, in every place. And those animals were always with me to protect me. When I walked, and I drove her cars, when, and she said, "Oh, you can drive any of the cars." She had a Land Rover. She had the, Jaguar. She had this kind of frumpy English car. I forget the name of it, but it was a 19. But it was, it would get you there, you know. And it was one of those cars that it was so plain Jane. If you were in it, no policemen, no, they would like not even notice you. It was like the invisible car. And she had a truck. She had like a military truck, like 1 ton or half ton. You could throw a lot of stuff, and they had big tires. You could run through floods. Whenever it would go. The Land Rover would take you through almost anything, but when it was really like snowstorm or flood or whatever, this thing would go through anything. It was a military vehicle, so I could drive them all around. And the other things, so like what are the 8-track? She had a windmill, and she had these deep cell batteries from a tugboat. I mean, really deep, gigantic DC batteries, right? And she had a converter, actually made AC. And actually, these batteries were so deep you could weld off of these suckers, right? And that current made, was in the process of her. She made acetylene, and she had all these gas lights and a gas stove and a gas this and she ran it off of frigging acetylene, and she had built all of this stuff. I mean, she was not only a medical person, not only a a shaman. She was not only a shamanic, psychosocial, cultural, forensic, anthropologic alchemist. That's what she was. She did all of those things. She had degrees. She was a master in all of those things, right? And car mechanic. She fixed all those cars. She fixed the tractor. And she was like 140. Anyway, and she would leave me there because she had things to do, right? I mean, that whole side of Ireland, she was their doctor. She delivered babies. I mean, she taught me how to be the apprentice of the midwife. There's a name for it. And that person holds the hand, gets the mother to breathe, washes, the towels, makes the soup. There's a term for that. I was her assistant. And she also, when there was a really bad accident, I would go with her. Some guy would whack himself in the foot with an axe or blow something off with a shotgun, or, get it caught in a bear trap. There was a lot of that because a lot of people were a little tipsy most of the time, or car crashes, and there was no Garda, no, EMTs, no hospital. She was it. So, and she would take me to, she wanted assistance, and that's midwife, but the midwife's assistant. That's what there's a name for it. Anyway, and she used to call me that. This is my, she used to, this is my assistant, or my Padawan. In the beginning, this is my Padawan, then this is my Griot, this is my adept. And, so she prepared me for me being able to master anything. She mastered everything, right? And she kept saying, hey, if I can do this, so can you. And that's what I'm telling you. If I can master all these things, so can you. So I, did all that stuff. She came, and when she came back, I had done everything she wanted, and I was in the greenhouse reading more books. And I had figured out where the two T's, and I had figured out T1 was to make you really strong, and you could chop wood all day, right? T2 was to really make you smart, and you could read these books. So I had was reading his books, and then I went in. She said, "Oh, you can read anything in the library," because she had her own library that was hers, and I had mine, but that was hers too. But the main library, where all the stuff was, you can go and read any of these books, and you don't have to wear gloves and a mask, and they're my books, right? So I went there, and I had them all over my little, study. That was it. It wasn't my library. That was the library. I had a study. She had her own library that I didn't go in unless she invited me in. Just like her bedroom. I didn't go into her bedroom unless she invited me in. And there was usually one reason for that. And so, she comes back. I have all the chores done. All the animals are out and happy. They're not where's she been? No, they're happy. Hey, I like this guy. He's all right. And I've prepared everything like she wanted, and I made a soup, So when she came home, I can't bake yet, but I found where she had all her bread, and I kind of got the nicest, 3 types of bread and cut them up, and had the sweet butter and the salted butter, and I went through the larder and figured out where everything was. I figured out where everything was, and I had a really nice sweet song playing on the 8-track. And I realized how she was making her acetylene, and I saw that another tank needed to be changed to, take this one's almost full, and nobody's been using it. So since this process is ongoing, I'll just put, this empty tank onto it and shut this one off and fill another tank. And so so she went and she kind of looked around and said, very good, because I did more than she put on the paper, and I didn't do anything that would piss her off, and things were wow. And she was hungry, and the soup was just ready, and she went off and got a few other things that we would eat, and and I didn't eat before. The only thing I ate were the things that she left me in my picnic basket, and I didn't eat the soup. I prepared everything on the dining room table, picked flowers, put it in a vase, picked some flowers, and I didn't put it in her bedroom, but she had a little table where there was a window. The light went on right before you went into her bedroom in that hallway, and I put a vase of flowers there, and I put another, in the library, and there was a doorway that went into her library, and I again, there was a window that kind of lit that doorway, one of those pocket doors, and there was a place to put flowers. So she went around and said, she came back, excellent, excellent. That's all she said, excellent, excellent. Let's have dinner. And so we did. And then we went off to the music room and again played music the night away and danced and fiddled and played the flute, and I played the drum. And then we took a nice long walk, first to the animals to see how they were, and then we sat at that beautiful bench and watched the stars, and then watched the northern lights over the pond. and we just kind of snuggled and we talked, and this is where, because she had been somewhere where it was chaos, and this is the time when, Northern Ireland was still, the IRA, the troubles were going on. And even though most of that was up in Northern Ireland, that stuff would come down into, free Ireland, right? And and these areas, this was like the Afghanistan of Ireland. It was these mountains, and I showed you the pictures of them. That it was like the West Coast Road, and the ocean on the west side, which is like the Gulf of Mexico. It's like the Florida of um, of Ireland, because the East Coast is like hits the North Sea. It's cold. It's gray. Ugh. West Coast of Florida has palm trees, right? And the Ring of Kerry is like sauna, and bathtub, and and so she went to a place where there was a bank, and there was a bombing. They blew up the front of the thing, and it was the market day, and like I said, it was like Afghanistan. A lot of people got hurt, died, messed up really bad, and she had been a surgeon, in World War I, and so she, that's where she was for 2 days, you know, and and when she came back, all of this was done, and she had this great meal, and we played and fluted, and then when we were sitting out under the stars, she started to talk about the process. And I said, the process? And she goes, yes. She goes, you know, just because we have automobiles and airplanes and rocket ships doesn't mean that we're evolving. Just because our technology is growing, it doesn't mean anything. That's just the distraction. And this is when, I kind of understood, because other people had told me about the Illuminati and esoteric things and occult things and blah, 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 blah. But she was the first one to really break it down into, that's just an illusion. That's part of the illusion. That's not really what's happening. What's happening is that the human spirit, that your consciousness is, in your light body in another dimension. And these, bags of water we have, these are avatars. And this whole illusion world was put down by love's co-creation to give us the opportunity to learn for ourselves. So, and basically, all of the angels, all of the hierarchy of, which is just, and then she, used the treatise of Plato's treatise of the cave. She goes, the folks who are looking at the shadow in the cave aren't humans. It's the angels. It is the archons, because they don't really have souls. They kind of do, but a dog has more of a soul than they do. But they are run in the same process as, animals, and that the animals have a, not just genetic, but within their context, this is how they are. Where human beings have the opportunity to be more than they are. And so, and that's why the angels are so pissed off, and that's why they basically say, I want to fucking kill these guys. But they can't, because even though they kill us, we come back. Right? And our true essence cannot be destroyed, because they're in a light body somewhere else. And and the angels can't get at that. But they realize that the human avatar, if it's diluted enough, it holds the residue of that life, when it goes into its higher self. And that's like when you die and follow the light, that light is the illusion, of Satan, of Lucifer, of God. That illusion is an illumination. That's why you follow the light. You're not supposed to. You're supposed to realize yourself. And in this form of the avatar, you have the opportunity to physically do it. But all humans lived to be 4 or 5 thousand years old, and you were a youngster if you were 900. So that we have been, diluted, polluted, putrefied so much of that we now only live a scant 60, 70, 80 years, right? And you can't learn anything in that short period of time. So what, Lucifer and God and all of those demigods are trying to do is to wear us down to the point where we will, boop, disappear. And that's, pretty much not going to happen. It hasn't happened in millennial, so it's not going to. And they've had so many frigging different times that they tried it. And, our planet has been wiped out by so many catastrophes, asteroids, floods, Nibiru, you name it, wars. And we still keep coming back. And our souls, or our conscious self, has not been destroyed. So when we go to the other side and we see our parents and grandma and Uncle Louie and that sweet little, my first girlfriend who got run over by a steamroller in third grade, we see them in their light bodies, but we see their physical avatar because we're still seeing with our senses, because we're polluted. So we don't see the glowing, consciousness. We see the glowing, mom, dad, Uncle Louie, and sweet little Susie. So she's going on about this. And, so I've been told enough things, about, Grandpa Stoll told me everything about Tesla and what, he did, and, Wilhelm Reich. And, I was hanging out in the Theosophical Society and a number of other esoteric groups, and I hung out at Weiser's bookstore with all these great wizards, and so I kind of knew, but no one broke it down like the old crone. No one was as amazing as her. No one was on the edge of being an ascended master. I never ever, meaning I bumped into Jesus a number of times, and I could tell, whoa. But just, hey Al, how you doing? A good job. Keep it up. Catch you later, right? But I am right there with this woman, and she has chosen me to be her adept, one-on-one in her farm, right? And so, and she basically, so this is the second night. Third night. First night we got there. The next 2 days, they were 2 days. She said, "Oh, there were 2 days." I said, "No, it was one day." She goes, "No, it was one day here, 2 days out there." And that's, this time displacement just kept happening, And so she just broke it all down and she kept giving me chunks, like a brownie, in the Matrix, the Oracle keeps giving everybody a chocolate chip cookie. It was like that, and you would get a little enlightenment with that chocolate chip cookie, right? So she kept giving me little bite-sized pieces of things for me to understand. But the major thing she said was, not everyone gets to come here. I mean, look at the chucklehead who runs Trinity. I don't even talk to him, because he can't handle what you've just experienced for the last it's been 4 days now that you've been here. You've experienced, you have felt that it was 2 days. At first day, yeah, if you didn't have that T1 and 2, you would have fallen asleep. But, that kept you going and kept your mind really absorbent. And, you and I would have turned around at that pub if you weren't able to have absorbed all the stuff you did, leaving Dublin and coming, going to Limerick, Ring Kerry and everything, that 72 hours, and you didn't fade, you were perfect, you did everything, and otherwise I would have turned around and dropped you back off at Trinity if you weren't the right guy by the time we hit that pub down the street. And I said, just not everyone, not many people come to this farm, but you are, you were my Padawan when I walked into that library and I was dressed like a bag woman. By the time you got to the farm, you were my adept. And you're stepping up. You're doing just what I want. You're doing better than I thought you could do. So I'm really impressed. This is, it's like the end of Casablanca when Rick and the French guy go and he goes, Louis, after he shoots the Nazi, this is going to be the beginning of a great friendship. And that's kind of the relationship that the old crone and I had, except she was a female spirit and I was a male spirit. And there were moments that took over. And that's the way it's supposed to be with men and women. Not sexy, I'm always thinking about, got to get off, got to run. You're not a dog that humps every female's leg, It's just when that energy is special. And that when that energy between two people, when two people come together and bring that spirit, you get love's co-creation. Right? So, 46 minutes and 51 seconds. So, let's see what you guys have been saying. You still talk about love and purity of heart and my, let's see, top of the evening. Compost, that's the word, compost. So I took a header that night into a compost pile, and I was just covered head to toe in grass clippings, food clippings, and animal feces. But I took a great shower, and it was like taking a mud bath. I mean, I got totally covered. She left, did whatever she did in her farmhouse. I went into my apartment above the barn and took a shower, and there were these, she said, go into the medicine cabinet. There's a purple, a green, and a pink squeeze bottle of soaps that have tinctures in them. Start the green, end with the pink, use the green lavishly. So I did. And then she said, there's another medicine cabinet right near the bathtub. After you get out of the shower, fill up the bathtub, put the big thing of, it looks like honey, pour that in there, it'll bubble up. It's another thing with crystals, throw it in there. And there's, by the way, a nice clay pot with a box of matches and some lamb's breath. So take a puff. And over there in the linen closet in the bathroom, not only are there towels and a nice robe and other things, but there's a couple bottles of pochine in there. So, go, have a nice bath. And there was an 8-track that I put music on and just soaked. After I took a shower and dried off, I went and got all that other stuff and started the bath and ran the water and put the bubble bath in and took out the pipe and packed it and got a little tray and got the little glasses and the pochine, and then I went in the kitchen and got some of those little tasty cakes and put them on a little plate, and then that's when I walked by the 8-track, just pushed it in, and it was this beautiful Irish music, just amazing. So, took a pipe, a little bite, little pochine, soaked my little body till I was just one, puddle of one bubble of the. I'll show you what I look like. This is what I was when I was in the bathtub. I was bubbled out, and then I bubbled out. I I love bubble. Yes. Oh. Do, 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 do. Hey, forever. Brother Jamie sounds like a priest. Well, we're all priests, even the female. And that's kind of what a adept is. Because you have to, in the old sense of the world, not the Christian sense of the world. And back in the old days, the bottom line, um, oh, Jesus' number one clan weren't the fishermen; it was women. Whenever you see a painting of Jesus nailed to the cross, the you can't see hide nor hair of those chucklehead guys, but he's totally surrounded by the girls, and they're just looking at him, and they are in connection, right? So they're in this kind of connection, you know, right? So priestesses, it's the same thing. It's that kind of divinity, that connection. Yes, I've asked everyone to, at their best, to, you know, document, not document, but download my chats from this channel, just because I've already missed someone's taken, not taken, yeah, taken, whether it was YouTube or well, it was probably YouTube, because there were a lot of things I did that the radio was on. So maybe they're going from that, and they were in the very, very, I started doing this in May, mid-May, and I had no idea what I was doing, and I had no real good access to the internet. I couldn't do this, so I had to like make a video and then put it up, you know, and that would take forever. That's why I like doing these live chats, because they go right. I can do 3 hours and it'll download on my channel, 15 minutes, if that. But I've missed a couple of them in the very beginning, about 10. And so that's when I started to ask people, put this down on your hard drive, put it on a thumb drive, put it on a DVD. Because it'd be nice if this, for some reason, disappeared, that you guys had a copy of it and that we could, because this is just the beginning. You know, we are going to take this and do some pretty amazing things, because we are doing amazing things. We're already being shamanic and alchemical, right? But we're going to take it, into, and it's also in the material world on the YouTube. That's, the platform, and when I first started, I was in the deep green going, oh, I want you all come to visit me, because I wanted to sit around the fire with you guys. I wanted to sweat with you guys. I wanted to do ceremony with you guys. And then when I realized, these people are all over the frigging planet. They're not just down the street. So that's when I realized, okay, I'm going to learn about this platform, and I'm going to take it into me and change it. Because if I want to change the rest of the illusionary world, I'm going to have to use this tool, right? Going to have to be able to send the shamanic wave, like that pebble on this screen here is the pond. So I don't even know what wrenches are or how to do it. So, Mr. Research, come and get me, and we'll play with this eye to eye, or we'll talk on the phone, or some, I need more, I need my own IT crew. And yes, wrenches, all the above. I don't know what it is, but I've heard the term. So, but that's, I'm very satisfied with what's happened so far. And I'm not. I watch a lot of folks on. You know, I'm saying, how's this chat work? So a lot of people leave things on my feed, leave things on my inbox, and like I said, you guys should go to my channel and look at what I have in my history of all the videos I've looked at, and that's quite interesting. And then you got all of the chats I've done. I've done probably almost 200. So I've only been doing this since mid-May of 2018, right? And so I'm pushing to 300 cadre, right? And it's definitely quality over quantity. And I'm pushing towards 20 something thousand views, and that's all good. But I am not looking at it to be rich and famous, to be an A-lister. No, I wouldn't want that. But I want it as a platform for us to bring our cadre out to all our relations and be a vehicle that will actually frigging change the world. Because it's we can do it. It's a doable thing. We're already doing it. See, that's the beauty of this. We're friggin' already doing this. That's what I love about this. We're already doing it. I was involved in so many social movements, and man, to put on I put on a number of gigantic, where 500,000 people show up to be against nuclear weapons. I was in the no nuke thing. I was in the Adbuster thing, which the Adbuster thing became, Occupy, and a lot of other movements I've been involved, and they don't do anything. They always get co-opted, But this can't get co-opted. That's the beauty of this. And that was the beauty of the Occupy movement, too. That was very hard to, it wasn't co-optable. But what happened to the Occupy movement was that people got bored because no one created an alternative aesthetic. The only place that the alternative aesthetic was really happening was Zuccotti Park. Did anyone make it to Zuccotti Park, there in Wall Street? Because there was this little park between, Merrill Lynch and the, where you got your suit from, Brooks Brothers. And the World Trade Center was across the street, and Trinity Church was over there, and the big Nazi bank was over there, and this little park was right in the middle. And Broadway was on one side, and Water Street, I guess it's called, which goes down into right where Wall Street is. It was right in the heart of the beast. And what was amazing, you went in there and people occupied that little park. No one ever went to that little park, because it was a teeny little park. And so they went down there and they kind of just sat there, and they didn't make any big noise, and it was no big deal. So a couple of days go by, and then they have a few tents, and then they start, drumming and having ceremony, and there are a bunch of grandmas there, right? And the cops come down, and the TV guys have shown up, right? And the cops hose down the grandmas with the industrial strength, pepper spray. But this is like, Agent Orange. And one of them dies right there. And the other two get really, have to be rushed off the hospital, and they're really, they're like the patron saints of this whole thing. And because it was caught on TV and one frigging died right there, the cops had to step back, politically. Oops. And that's when, everybody rushed in and set up camp. It was like a rainbow gathering, but with really, so there were everybody who was there. They had kitchens, they had medical center, they had a library, they had classes, they had lectures. It was like a replay of what happened in Berkeley in 1965 when the kids came back from being in Alabama on the Freedom Riding, right? And that was, Occupy. And they stayed there for a year and a half, and it was so much amazing. And so there was no place to really get comfortable because the whole park was basically concrete, and all the benches were concrete, but they had a lot of great trees. And so I brought my hammock and a tarp, right? Plus, I had a friend who worked for, there's a big, fancy, rich people hotel right next to Lehman Brothers. Starts with an M. But anyway, my friend, when he heard that, and he was an old anti-nuclear guy, but now he's like, millionaire guy, works for the man. And I was working for the corporate scene. So, but anyway, I could take time off and go do this. And I had a lot of friends whose kids were there. A number of my godchildren were there. And it was like so sweet. They were like taking up after our example, what we did in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And now here they are doing it in the early O's. And and I was Grandpa Smurf, so they did it. I knew they were doing it. And I went there about 3 weeks once they really got it going. And my friend said, oh, here's a suite in that hotel. I've got you booked in for as long as you want to stay there. And you can take the kids up there and have them shower. You can have room service. And that's what I did. I bring up 10, 20, 30 people. It had 2 king-size beds and a couch that fell out and had a jacuzzi. And it was a suite, right? And loads of TVs and had room service. And my friend was picking up the bill. So it was pretty easy to spend 3 weeks at Zuccotti Park in the middle of, spring, June. I was there June and July, middle of June to end of July or whatever, like 3 weeks once it got started. Now, if every place that had an Occupy had done that, and everyone served everyone. No one was like, I'm the boss, and they had this great thing called the soapbox. And MSNBC, they had a camera that had a feed, and same with CNN, had a feed there that ran 24/7. And you could just get up on the soapbox and say whatever you wanted to, the world. It was really, it was an amazing thing. But most of the rest of the Occupy movement didn't go there because everybody did it because they wanted to be cool. They wanted to be on TV. They wanted to be, they weren't there to serve love's co-creation, right? But this crew here, this cadre, has that same flavor, same flair, same everything that Zuccotti Park had, right? And so the movement went out, and it was, it was part of, the Arab Spring movement. It was, all of this was in the air, and the powers that shouldn't be in the hidden hand. Basically, when things like grow up, they see how they can corrupt it and turn it to their own use. And they did. They took, the Occupy movement, which was a brilliant thing because there were no leaders. There was nobody who stood up on the stage. And then, all the different ones, they all. And so I traveled around with a bunch of these youngsters who started this in Zuccotti Park. Took a road trip, and especially these. There was such a bunch of cute ladies from Canada who were like from Toronto, who were just like, and they were all about love. They really were. So, I'm talking about co-creation with love. So we were on the same page, and what they would do is like, I remember at Zuccotti Park, there was a young man who was definitely a gangster. He was like from Brooklyn. He was a gang Italian boy, and he went there to see what he could steal. And she said, "Oh, look at this guy. He's." So she went there and held his hand and just melted his heart with her love, and her. She was a person who, if you needed love, she would shower you with it. Of all forms, right? And so she changed that guy. So he went from a guy who wanted to beat people up all the time and be drunk and be a gangster, made man, but he'd probably end up shot. He became a sweetheart. And he was like the sheriff, right? So he would, and not beat people up, but he had that kind of rough edge. And my little thing was, I knew a lot of policemen, so I'd say, "Oh, there's Bob," and I, say, "So what's going on, buddy?" So, "Oh, hey, how you doing? Where you been all these years?" I said, "Well, out of town." And so we would talk, and I would get the intel. So what's your? He says, "Well, we're not gonna, so we just gotta contain you guys, and you're a really sweet bunch. You feed us all the time. Great food. I love the food, and the conversation's great, and the music, and the girls are cute. It's a really cool thing. Yeah, I should have known you're involved, right, Al?" I said, "No, I'm just visiting." "Oh yeah, you're just visiting." Anyway, so basically, the cops basically had the attitude where they would, they stuck TV cameras on every tree, right? And they were videotaping everything, but that was fine with everybody, because so was CNN, so was MSNBC, so was CNN, and so it was amazing for about almost a year until all these other crews. And so what, the powers that shouldn't be. So they took all that intelligence that they got. They saw how this was organized. That there was no leaders. That everyone was stepping up to lead by example. So they basically sent intelligence people out to all the cities and all the places where, the Occupy movement was starting to percolate, and basically they did the same thing. But the little twist they put on it was they looked for the folk who wanted to be the leaders, who wanted to be on stage, who wanted their ego to be, massaged, and they gave them the power that be to be, you know, the Stalinist obstructionist. Way different back then. Yep. Yep. Well, you know how they say, especially New York, everything changed but stays the same. And there's always some other place that is the cool place, right? And you just have to get, Asheville. I got there 10 years before it came the hipster jungle. When there's nobody there, it was just amazing, right? And I had a lot of fun there. Same with Ithaca, New York. I was there, I got there in 88. It didn't become Ithaca until we did the gathering there. Until when I left in 91 is when Ithaca started to become, instead of just, because it was kind of a dead town. If it wasn't for Cornell and Ithaca College, that place would have been, forget about it. So the thing is that's why I love being on the road, because you find a really groovy place, and I don't just cruise through. I'll stumble onto, oh wow, this is cool. I'll stay there a year, or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 10, and use that energy to build up. I mean, one reason why Asheville, North Carolina is the way it is that I was there when there was nothing going on, and I was doing lots of this kind of stuff, and had, I got a lot of pictures of that too, and we did shows, and we did all the kind of stuff we did in Soho, we did in Asheville, and that's why it's the hipster artist scene. And you could get a really nice house for like, $75 in Asheville, but not now. Gastonia, really? You're an Ithaca girl or guy, or is that Asheville? Asheville. Yeah, you should have seen Asheville when it was amazing. Now it's a hipster jungle, and I-40 and I-26 go right downtown, and Asheville is in a bowl. It has more poisonous air to breathe than in China. It's really bad. And there's a nasty paper plant just up I-40. And the other amazing thing, about 30,000 people die a year from just drinking Asheville's drinking water. Back in the day, in the 20s, Asheville was the Paris of the South. That's where all the rich people came up from Atlanta to be in the mountains, and up near Waynesville were all these great hotels. And So in the 20s, and it was still a mountain little town, right? And so, but the Astors and the Biltmores and the Rockefellers were all there. That's Biltmore House. And there was this big hotel, Grove Park Inn. And so they basically, in the 20s, leveled the city because it was mountains right through the city, right? And they did things, and the French Broad used to flood through it. And so they kind of elevated the city, like where Broadway meets Patton Avenue, and there is Wall Street, and there are a lot of streets named after Lexington Avenue, because all these New Yorkers were there. And so they made it, this really beautiful place, right? And they, the big mountains, they couldn't, just gnaw down or level off. They built, the tunnel that went from one side of the city to the other, and they built the downtown city plaza and a few other great things. And there was that Asheville was the center of patent medicines. Up in those mountains, there were more healing herbs than in the rainforests of Brazil. And there was this guy who had the world's greatest herbalist, and he had a school there, right? And his school was what, University of North Carolina at Asheville is today. And so that whole mountain was just healing herbs in their natural state. And he had down below this forest that was like a greenhouse, right? And Broadway, from where 26 is all the way into town, was his driveway. And there's a tributary that goes over to the French Broad, and he had all of these water basin herbs, healing herbs planted there. And so when he died, he signed all of his property and all of his money over to the city of Asheville with the expressed thing. He had put it in a trust and set it up so the money would pay for that school in perpetuity. He had gone to Cooper Union, my alma mater, and he set it up a school there so people could come free and learn how to cure people of every disease. And so then the Depression came, right? And they had spent millions of dollars to turn it into the Paris of South, and they had no money to pay off their contractors. And so they went bankrupt, and court said you had to pay this much money. And the city of Asheville, North Carolina, did not finish paying off its Depression debt until 1996. So nobody would lend them any money. So the city of Asheville was basically an amber. That's why all those old buildings and all that stuff was where it was. And that's when I got there in 91 and left in 99. So 96 happened, and it exploded. And there was this, he called himself Guru Maji. And he was just a fat Jewish boy from Brooklyn, but he knew how to scam. And he's one of the first people who was blogging. And he was blogging all over the world, come to Asheville, come to Asheville. And people did. And you could buy a house for $8,000. And now you can't, that's where, you can't buy a shoebox in Asheville for under $300,000. So when this thing happened, when, the city couldn't pay off its contractors, there was a guy who put in water and sewage in the city of Asheville in 1926. And then he didn't get paid. He was so pissed off, he burnt all of the documentation of where the sewer and water lines are. The city of Asheville has no idea where 60% of the water lines. And I know this because I was on their water department, with this woman named Robin, whatever her name was. And so all they could do was add more and more chlorine to the water. And all that did, because they got their drinking water from the sewage, and the water and sewage lines were right on top of each other, and they were made out of terracotta. And those mountains are always kind of shaken, and so all of the pipes were broken, and everything intermingled for the last 70 years. And all the city could do, the water department could do, was add more and more chlorine. So all that did was kill the weaker bugs and made the stronger bugs. So today, 30,000 people die from drinking that water, but most of them don't live in Asheville. They come and visit. Oh, it's so groovy. It's so well. It's a piece of, because back in the day, and this is how most old parts are. Because I've been there, and yes, there's a lot of stuff going on there, but it's faux. I mean, there are all these guys sitting in on the little tables out on Broadway, drinking their chai tea and smoking their gawas. And oh, what are you doing here? Oh, I'm writing my novel. No, they're not. They went to Warren Wilson. Daddy's rich. I called them trustafarians. Now, there's still a lot of great art and a lot of great people in Asheville, but it's not what it used to be, that's for sure. And it's deadly. And the gangs are there in a big way, and the crime is there. Crime is always there. There are tons of murders there. That's one of the centers for Satan's little murders and offerings. There's a park by the French Broad River where at least 20, 30 bodies are left, decapitated and cut into parts. And it's the same people who cut those girls up in Morocco that are doing this in Asheville, North Carolina. So there's a little wake-up call at your Sensei Al. And this goes on everywhere. And there is this thing called Satan's Highway that goes from Lexington, Virginia, down 81 to, Johnson City, Tennessee. You hang a left on 26, and you go to Asheville. And those two places are like they call it the, buckle of the Bible Belt. Well, it's also Satan's suspenders. And if you do a little homework, you will see this. And the other interesting thing is that the Justice Department and the powers that be do not keep any statistics. Just like more than 1.5 million people go missing every year in the national forest and the cities of America. And there are no statistics on it. So here it is, an hour and 17 minutes, and you guys haven't said much. Born in 95. Be right back. Okay. So that's Asheville. Asheville is the city of hipsters and trustafarians. And yes, I have a lot of dear friends there. But they're like stuck there because they bought their house when it was $20,000 and, they had a business, and now they're old like me and they're just living on, the little bit, and they're like stuck there, kind of like how I'm stuck here. But I have nothing. So I can, go anywhere, and I just let the universe take care of me. Now, you have to be pretty brave to do that, and most people aren't that brave. And I can't, there's nothing I have no kids and no dogs, got nothing to lose. Now, I have a number of places I can stay when it's warm, like in Virginia and West Virginia. There are a number of communities I help put together, like the Deep Green, that, I can always go, there's always that place. I don't own it, though. I don't own anything. Just to get just a pittance from Social Security, I had to get rid of everything. Because, for the last 40 years of my life, I was a scholar. I worked for the man, the last 10 years I worked for the Desperate Lawyers. So I paid taxes on all that and made a really good salary. So, I had a credit rating of 804, what the highest thing, for 20 years. I came out of nowhere, and then, I was there. And then I'm nowhere again. I'm the nowhere man. He's a real nowhere man. Yep. But The beam is hitting you all. Yep. Let's see. So, in the last 30 years, I got paid to look at these trends. So I have a pretty good ability to see what people don't see. People go to, yes, you go to, if you don't live in Asheville and you visit it from Boise or New Jersey or, you know, Chicago, yeah, it's beautiful, it's nice. But if you go up on the veranda of that big hotel when sun is going down, you want to throw up because you see this black chocolate cake of air because the sun's going down there and the top part is super orange, pink, orange, greenish, brown, puke, shit. And people are breathing the shit, right? And if you were to take the water out of somebody's tap in West Asheville, it has more lead than in the water that was in that town that got whacked by the lead water, because all the pipes there are terracotta and lead, and no one in those neighborhoods, you know, if you have a pretty strong immune system, you just get diarrhea and if you have AIDS or if you have a compromised immune system or anything wrong with your liver, you die. Like I said, 30,000 people die there. Now, I have again, never believe anything that your Sensei Al Bob tells you, But check it out. I'm back and forth. Divine fish. Mr. Mike. Who else is here? Well, somebody, I'm up for every, this is a cadre. This is a group effort. Your Sensei Al Bob is doing all he can do, So if anybody wants to spread the word of this and put it around, but I'm happy to start out slow and like I said, quality over quantity. And but I'm ready to go to 1 million. I'm ready to get, I need an IT, because I need to organize this stuff a little better and use, all of the mediums to their best ability. I'm not prejudiced, Facebook this or that. I'm ready to, because I would never use it the way it's designed to be crack cocaine. I would use it as the way it would be best to spread this word, right? That's so. If somebody else was listing this on things, and if they were getting paid for it and they could just send me some cash, or pick me up and take me to someplace warm where we could, what I'd loved, to do is start a base of operations, someplace that isn't as, this school is not, in any way a base of operation. The place that, the Humanities Artist Trust International needs to be set up is in a place where it can be safe, where it can't be thrown out or under the bus or be at the whim of any individual, right? And it has to be, the cadre has to be one that comes from the heart and not the ego or fear or anxiety. No one involved in this can really, or it would be hard for anyone who would be, focused on anxiety and fear to be part of this, because it's like when you are on the chat here, it is like being in a dishwasher wash and rinse and then spin, and if you're anxious, if you're worried about, stupid shit, then you really can't be, part of this. Now, if you change that, you can be part of this. If you can meditate and release yourself and put all your angst into the Akashic record and go back and see, oh, wow, that's what I was doing. Oh, I'm going to change. If you can change, if you can suspend your disbelief of your belief of your fear and your disbelief of love, if you can suspend those, then you got a shot at this, But otherwise, just alchemically, shamanically, folk who are of that nature, they either have to change, um, within their deep self, not like, oh, like change a pair of socks. But there, so we've been around here, and since October, this is when this thing really kind of started to grow bigger. There have been many folk who I would, just like me, I have this cheeky monkey part of me. And there are many of you who had bumped into this place. And, you saw it as part of yourself, people call it trolling. And they were there to be that. And people say, oh, that person, we should get rid of it. I said, no, we need that person. That person's perspective is just what we need. And so that person was amazing to be able to step up and go, wow, and have the aesthetic understanding about, oh, actually, I like this. Actually, I'm going to be my better, oh, yeah. And we, the cadre, all our relations, constantly gives each other, a space where we can all be ourselves in love's co-creation. We all can go into our sanctuary of our and be on the meadow on our picnic blanket, and then travel together through the crack of the tree of knowledge. So, another great little chat. And so tomorrow I will again pick up where we left off with the old crone, right? Let's see, it's 1 hour and 27 minutes and 30 seconds. Maybe I'll go for another 10, 15 minutes about what the old crone was talking about, which is kind of what I was thinking about today. And so she came back, and I had the soup for her, and she had been away 2 days, but I only thought it was 1 day, right? So she told me about, this little town that got hit by the IRA, but it probably wasn't the IRA, because the IRA really didn't attack that way in Free Ireland. Now, they did rob banks, but it was like they were like the English banks, Barclays, since they would rob those banks. But they would do it in a way that they didn't really hurt anybody unless the army dropped on them. Yeah, there'd be a fire, but they watched out for the innocents, unless they were English. And they would take them out in the most, I was in London when they bombed that bar and killed like 300 people. That was a mess. And again, my observation of it, it wasn't so much the IRA doing that, but the hidden hand doing it in such a way that it looked like the IRA. Because the IRA was ready, willing, and able to put down the gun as long as the British Army would get out of there. But they stayed there for 20 years, mostly because the English birthed their Polaris nuclear-tipped submarines in Northern Ireland, up there in the city there, because that was a gigantic harbor, and that's why the English they had a big shipyard up there, and it was a gigantic harbor, and that was one reason why England kept a hold of it. And it wasn't until the end of the Cold War that they said, oh, we don't need those submarines anymore. We don't need to base them there. So they brought them back to England, and they said, oh, we're going to join the EU. And so They went that way, and Ireland joined the EU. And about, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years after that, they had the peace treaty, right? So the old timers, they had to die. So that's why Brexit is going to be such a mess, because that port is still a very important port, not only to England, but to Ireland. And the fact that for the last 20 something years, they've been able to take stuff off those boats and truck them all over Ireland and down to the East Coast and take them over into the rest of Europe and then into England. And if Brexit does a hard Brexit, and on Northern Ireland, because they get cut off, they put a real fence on the border between North and South Ireland, and the free Ireland, then it's going to be, it'll heat it all up again. And the powers that shouldn't be will love it, because they love death and destruction in war. They make so much money out of war because they lend money. They take over a country's banks. That's why we don't have any nation state. We live in a transnational corporate state. Anyway, when, the crone came back after that, and, in her car, she had all her surgical clothes just covered in blood. She said, in the back, I have a bag. Can you wash those clothes? I said, sure. So, she could get bummed out for an ascended master, because she had been part of the human race for so long that she had seen everything. And she had, she was in service to love's co-creation. And she saw, her farm was the poster of what love's co-creation can do. The whole friggin' planet could be her farm. And so this Russian woman, the cedar, the book on the cedars. And again, if you go to my video feed, someone sent me a YouTube on again, get a hold of me at thedudewake42@gmail. And they sent me that, and I looked at it on my YouTube, and it's on my video feed of my YouTube up there. And you will see that I look at everything, and I look at not only politics, economics, religion, UFOs, and what military is doing, and where the money of the military is going. So that's, that is your Sensei Alba being the demographic dude that he was all those years. And, all you got to do is go on my channel and not just watch the YouTubes, but go look at all those videos. There's a real, I put them up there in a certain way, again, shamanically, for you to learn something. So, and that's why I need a more personal crew to start to organize this stuff. I'm just doing the best I can. Again, if anyone wants to send me anything, you can mail anything to me to my P.O. Box 1165, Vinton, Virginia, Vinton, Virginia 24179. And you want to send me anything in Western Union, send it to Al, Martino, to Roanoke, Virginia, and then get a hold of me at the my Gmail, thedudewake42, and give me the tracking number. And go read my stuff on my blog. And again, anybody who's a writer, who's a publisher, I've set that. It's called Griot Publishing, but it's xratted.blogspot.com. So I'd love it. Go read it, because that's, again, you'll get a really interesting insight on your Sensei Alba. You'll pick up a lot of how to look at codes, a lot to look at how shamanic ceremony works, and a lot on how energetic alchemy works. It's all in my writing. So anyway, and I love you guys, and so we're getting up to 1 hour 34 minutes and 31 seconds. And if anyone, I think you're being a bit too kind. Well, research, buddy. I'm always a bit too kind, because that's who I am. I'm really not down on anybody because I've been around enough to know that you can't fight these guys. But you can alchemically, change them. Okay, headed to bed. What time is it, Mr. Research? Because you're in my same time zone. Right, tomorrow's Saturday. So it's been like almost 3 or 4 hours. I started at 7, so it's about 10 or 11, something like that. Okay, conscious research. Love you guys. Stay in touch. I'll see you tomorrow morning. I'll be on mine. Did Miss Fish come back yet? Okay, gang. I'm gonna jump off here at 36. I'm gonna jump off. So if anyone has anything to say before I go, okie dokie. Well, you can always take your car to. They have Firestone has a good $30 check everything for you, rotate the tires, put in fluids. So, but I understand about finicky cars. Okay, 1 hour, 36 minutes, and 22 seconds. We're getting on the countdown here. And we're gonna go back into Bubble Land. And here we are, 4, 5, 6. Love you guys.